So today, July 22nd, 2017, on the Roman calendar, and Tammuz 28, 577 on the Hebrew calendar. Today, on the front page of the Jerusalem Post, father of Halamish terrorists, the occupation is to blame for the attack. So, of course, the terrorist, the one who raised and molded the terrorists to murder Jews, says these words: the occupation, or Israel, is to blame for the attack. Now, this, of course, is nothing new. But something else happened yesterday. Times of Israel. The U.S. State Department says settlements, lack of hope, drive Palestinian violence. In other words, they repeat the same words as the terrorists do. That's right. The State Department of the United States, under Donald Trump, the man who said that he stands with Israel, his State Department said the same words as the terrorist father did. Let me read to you a little bit of this article. Washington, a new U.S. State Department report says a myriad of Israeli policies, in other words, it's Israel's fault, such as continued settlement building, which they have a right to do, but they're saying the settlement building and aggressive military operations in the West Bank. First of all, it's not the West Bank, it is Judea and Samaria. So even saying West Bank is playing into the hands of terrorists, are driving Palestinian terrorism while the Palestinian Authority is making substantial efforts to halt such violence. That one sentence has multiple lies. This is a slanderous statement against Israel. It is a boastful, wicked statement against Israel. And I noticed something today. Where was Nikki Haley, the ambassador to the UN? Normally, in an instance like this, she is the first one that stands up and shouts. In every case, she is. Who told her to shut up? This report from the U.S. State Department, an annual assessment of worldwide terrorism published this month, detailed a number of Palestinian attacks against Israelis in 2016, including rockets launched from Gaza, gunmen opening fire on civilians in Tel Aviv, and numerous stabbing attacks. And yet you're telling me that it's Israel's fault? Israel again faced terrorist threats from Palestinian terrorists from Gaza and the West Bank, said the report from Gaza and Judea and Samaria. People, get it right or shut up. Said the report titled Country Reports on Terrorism 2016. Since 2015, a series of lone offender attacks by Palestinians in Israel, Gaza and the West, Judea and Samaria have increased tensions between Israel and the Palestinians. Now, they just got finished saying it was Israel's fault. But then they admit that it's the Palestinians in Israel, Gaza, and the West Bank, the lone offender attacks that has increased tensions between Israel and the Palestinians, and somehow it's Israel's fault? Continued drivers of violence include lack of hope in achieving Palestinian statehood. This lack of hope is perpetrated not by Israel, but is perpetrated by Mahmoud Abbas. Abu Mazen is his real name. And the freeloaders that leech off of foreign aid by the U.S. and other countries. And this foreign aid is aiding and abetting the terrorists, aiding and abetting the murderers of the Jews. As they're saying, continued drivers of violence include lack of hope in achieving Palestinian statehood, Israeli settlement construction, they say the West Bank over and over again, in Judea and Samaria. I guess to them, heaven forbid that they would actually tell the truth and call it Jewish land. Settler violence against Palestinians in, once again, Judea and Samaria. The perception that the Israeli government was changing the status quo. Perception? Was the perception the truth? Obviously not. But that didn't change them. That didn't keep them from slandering Israel, now did it? Changing the status quo on Haram al-Sharif, Temple Mount, and IDF tactics that the Palestinians considered overly aggressive, the report said. So the synopsis of this Times of Israel report is that that kind of diagnosis is unusual for the U.S. President Donald Trump's administration, which has been reluctant to criticize Israel, let alone suggest it is partly responsible for Palestinian terror. So now that has changed. So now the Trump administration is claiming that Israel is responsible for Palestinian terrorism. That's enough of this nonsense. I'm not going to read any more of it. So we have the cities of this world against or joining up with the terrorists against Israel. Let me show you something, if I can get this thing to work properly. Jeremiah 50. The judgment upon Babylon. What I want to explain to everyone today is that the judgment upon all the cities of the nations is the same as the judgment upon Old Babylon. You see, the judgment upon Old Babylon was a precursor, a forerunner to the judgment upon all the nations, all the cities of this world. I will go on to explain this in just a minute, but I have to go through much of Jeremiah 50 to set the stage for what is going to happen in the future. Verse 1, the word that Jehovah spoke against Babylon and against the land of the Chaldeans by Jeremiah the prophet. Declare ye this among the nations. Why not just declare it to Babylon? There's a reason. Because all the nations need to read this Jeremiah 50, and it's going to happen to all the nations of this earth. And publish and set up a standard, publish and conceal not. Say, Babylon is taken, Baal is confounded, Merodach is broken to pieces, her idols are confounded, her image is broken into pieces. For out of the north there shall come a nation against her, which shall make her land desolate, and none shall dwell therein, and they shall depart both man and beast. In those days and in that time, saith Jehovah, the children of Israel shall come home. You see, this is a forerunner of what's to come. This happened once, it's going to happen again. The children of Israel and Judah together, the children of Israel and the children of Judah together, going and weeping they shall go. They shall seek Jehovah their Elohim. They shall ask the way to Zion with their faces theretoward, saying, Come and let us join ourselves unto Jehovah in a perpetual covenant that shall not be forgotten. Now, this covenant that shall not be forgotten is the new covenant. So this portion does apply to the future. Therefore, what we just read about Babylon also applies to the future. My people have been lost sheep. Their shepherds have caused them to go astray. They have turned them away on the mountains. They have gone from mountain to hill, from land to land, all around the earth. They have forgotten their resting place. All have found them, have devoured them. And their adversary said, We are not offenders, because they have sinned against Jehovah. So what the Gentiles say, we are not at fault. We can do what we want to with the Jews. We can slander the Jews. We can murder the Jews. We can steal the gold out of their teeth. We can burn them alive. We can rip their babies out. Because they sinned against Jehovah. This is what they say. Whether it's on their lips or in their hearts, it makes no difference. The habitation of justice, even Jehovah, the hope of their fathers. Remove. So he's telling Israel to get out of Babylon and go forth out of the land of the Chaldeans and be as the he-goats before the flocks. The he-goats before the flocks, they're the ones to take the lead. For lo, I will raise and cause to come up against Babylon an assembly of great nations from the north country, and they shall set themselves in array against her. And from there shall they be taken with arrows, and shall be as a mighty and expert man, and none shall return in vain. And Chaldea shall be a spoil, and all that spoil her shall be satisfied, saith Jehovah. Now, I will go to verse 17. Israel is a scattered sheep. The lions have driven him away. First it was the king of Assyria. Next this Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, has broken his bones. Therefore saith Jehovah of hosts, the Elohim of Israel, Behold, I will punish the king of Babylon and his land, just as I have punished the king of Assyria. And I will bring Israel again to this habitation, and he shall feed in Carmel and Bashan, and his soul shall be satisfied upon Mount Ephraim and Gilead. Gilead is on the east side of the Jordan River. The Jordanians still have control of it. In those days and in that time, saith Jehovah, the iniquity of Israel shall be sought for. Yes, the nations are looking for an excuse to blame Israel. And we have the Trump administration of the United States is now blaming Israel, accusing Israel of sin. But it's written right here that the iniquity of Israel shall be sought for, and there shall be none. And the sins of Judah, those living in that land right now, Jews, Judah, and they shall not be found. For I will pardon them who I reserve. You see, folks, the 77s are finished. And if the 77s are finished, and I have pointed out to as many as will listen, and very few will listen, but I have pointed out to as many as will listen, that when the 77s are finished, it is time to pardon Israel. Forgiveness of sin. Verse 21, go up against the land of Merathaim, even against it, and against the inhabitants of Pekod. Waste and utterly destroy after them, saith Jehovah, and do according to all that I have commanded you. A sound of battle is in the land, and of great destruction. How is the hammer of the whole earth cut asunder and broken? How is Babylon become a desolation among the nations? I have laid a snare for you, and you are also taken, O Babylon, and you are not aware. You are found and caught, because you have striven against Jehovah. Now those of you, of the nations, I don't care where these nations are from, if you strive against Israel, you are striving against Jehovah. I will explain. I will use New International Version. And I will start in verse 11. Again, I ask, did they stumble? Did Israel stumble that they should fall beyond recovery? Not at all. Rather, because of their transgression, salvation has now come to the Gentiles to make Israel envious. But if their transgression means riches for the world, and their loss means riches for the Gentiles, how much greater riches? Greater than what? Greater than the Gentiles' riches. How much greater riches will their inclusion bring? Inclusion? Yes, they are going to be brought back and included back and grafted back in, says Paul. Says Paul, the only apostle to the Gentiles. Verse 13, I am talking to you, Gentiles. Yes, you Gentiles. You who speak against Israel. You who boast against Israel. You who say we have not sinned, even though we've committed atrocities against Israel, stabbed them in the back, disemboweled them, stolen gold out of their teeth, burned them alive. No, we have not sinned. That's what the Gentiles say, and I just read it in Scripture. So don't sit here and go and rail at me for pointing this out. All I'm doing is reading from the Scripture. I am talking to you Gentiles inasmuch as I am the apostle to the Gentiles. Paul was the only apostle to the Gentiles. I take pride in my ministry in the hope that I may somehow arouse my own people to envy and to save some of them. For if their rejection brought reconciliation to the world, to the Gentile world, what will their acceptance be but life from the dead? It won't be anything less, folks. Verse 16, for if part of the dough offered as first fruits is holy, and that portion of the dough was Yeshua Messiah, then the whole batch, that means all the 12 tribes are holy. If the root is holy, that's Yeshua Messiah, then so are the branches holy. So I say, I, Henry, say, that if you speak against the branches, then you're also speaking against the only one under heaven who can save you. That's right. And you want to go and slander the Jews. Again, I say, when you go and you slander the Jews, when you find fault with the Jews in Israel, you are speaking against Israel's Messiah, the chosen one, the only name under heaven by which anyone can be saved. You are biting the hand that saves you. For if some of the branches have been broken off in you, though a wild olive shoot have been grafted in among the other branches, and now share in the nourishing sap of the olive root, do not consider yourself to be superior to these other branches. Yet what is happening? Disobeying of the words of Paul is what's happening right now before our very eyes. From the nation who calls themselves Israel's ally. That's not Israel's ally. Only an enemy would agree with the terrorist dad and accuse Israel of causing the murder and mayhem and the riots. If you do this, you do not support the root, but the root supports you. So what he is saying is, you are speaking against the root. You are saying you're superior to the root. You're saying you're superior to the Messiah. You will say then, branches were broken off so that I could be drafted in. Granted. But they were broken off because of unbelief, and you stand by faith. Do not be arrogant, but tremble. For if Jehovah did not spare the natural branches for sinning, he will not spare you either. That's the words of Paul, folks. The only apostle to the Gentiles. So if you don't listen to Paul, you're finished, Gentile. Consider, therefore, the kindness and sternness of Jehovah, sternness to those who fell, but kindness to you, provided that you continue in his kindness. Kindness? Continue in his kindness. Take a look around you. Which nation is being kind to Israel today? Which nation is not falsely accusing Israel? Otherwise, you will be cut off. So, if you go around, nations, each and every nation needs to understand. You go around falsely accusing, slandering Israel, you will be cut off. That's what Paul said. It's not me. Don't look at me. Don't sit here and say my tone is wrong. I have a wrong attitude. That's not the way to get a following. I don't want a following. You're not to follow me. Listen to the truth. Do your own Bible study. Yeah, you're going to be cut off, it says. And if they do not persist in unbelief, and Ezekiel 39 says they will not persist in unbelief. It says, from that day and forward, they will know that Jehovah is Elohim. That's what is said. From that day and forward. What day and forward? Well, Haggai 2 says the day to remember is the 24th day of the 9th month. Not on the Roman calendar, on the Hebrew calendar, the first day of Hanukkah. For Jehovah is able to graft him in again. And who are you, O man, to say, no, you can't come in, Israel? I have many former friends, because anybody who says that Israel is rejected and is never going to be brought back again, they are my enemy. You're my enemy if you say that. Because who are you, O man, to tell Jehovah what he can do and what he can't do? You say that he can't bring Israel in again? How foolish can a man be? Yes, he is able to graft them in again. After all, if you were cut out of an olive tree that is wild by nature and contrary to nature, or grafted into a domesticated olive tree, how much more readily will these, the natural branches, be grafted into their own olive tree? It ain't that the truth. Verse 25, I do not want you to be ignorant of this mystery, brothers and sisters, that you may not be conceited. Israel has experienced a hardening in part until the full number of the Gentiles have come in, and in this way all Israel shall be saved. And that statement, Romans 11:26, offends a lot of people. And this statement by Paul exposes the works of iniquity among those who call themselves Christians or Muslims when they are offended by this particular passage. In this way, all Israel shall be saved. It says all Israel shall be saved. As it is written, the deliverer will come from Zion. He will turn ungodliness away from Jacob. And this is my covenant with them. That's the new covenant in Jeremiah 31, verse 31. Read it and read it again and believe it. When I shall take away their sins. So their sins are going to be taken away, and none will be found, just like what is written in Jeremiah 50 and verse 20. You see, Paul agrees with the prophets. There is no wiggle room here. Israel's sins will be forgiven. Jehovah will pardon them. And how dare any of you nations, after the 77s are finished, or even before then, you should never have persecuted Israel in this way. You should never have done what it says up here. How was it? The nations say because Israel has sinned that the nations are not at fault for the treachery and the wickedness they perpetrated upon the Jews. But the nations will be judged. And let me explain. Come on, where are you, James? Okay, here we go. James 2. I will go to the New Living Translation, James 2, verse 13. There will be no mercy for those who have not shown mercy. But if you have been merciful, Gentiles, and there have been some that have been merciful, there are a lot of names out there, individuals, who took it upon themselves to intervene and save many Jews from the Holocaust. To them will be shown mercy. That is how a Gentile is supposed to act. That is the kind of Gentile that Paul wanted the Gentiles to be. But unfortunately, in comparison to those who heap sin upon sin against the Jews, those merciful Gentiles are few and far between. And it's such a shame. But folks, you have to understand that in the days of Israel, the whole nation of Israel and the whole nation of Judah were punished and rewarded according to what their king did, what their leadership did. It's going to be the same way for the Gentile nations. If your leaders act perversely towards Israel in these last days, the whole nation is going to be punished for it. But Israel and the righteous will be saved out of it. Now, I said that the Babylon to come will receive the same punishment as the Babylon of old. Revelation 18 and verse 4. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, "Come out of her, my people." We just read that in Jeremiah 50, did we not? "Come out of her, my people, that you be not partakers of her sins, that you receive not her plagues. For her sins have reached unto heaven, and Jehovah has remembered her iniquities. Reward her even as she has rewarded you." Rewarded who? Judah and Jerusalem, all the whole house of Israel. All the nations of this world has dealt treacherously with Israel. Double unto her, double according to her works. In the cup in which she has filled to her double. How much has she glorified herself and lived deliciously? So much torment and sorrow give her, for she said in her heart, "I sit as a queen, am no widow, and see no sorrow. Therefore her plague shall come in one day, death, mourning, famine, and she shall utterly be burned with fire. For strong is Jehovah Elohim who judges her." Now, this great city that burned, in my opinion, but there is one more to come, one more judgment upon Babylon to come. But Constantinople was burned by the 10 toes. It was burned by the Crusaders. And it fitted the description here. However, there is one more. This one is in the last plague. Revelation 16. Verse 17. And the seventh angel poured out his vial into the air, and there came a great voice out of the temple of heaven from the throne, saying, "It is done." And there were voices and thunders and lightning, and there was a great earthquake, such as not since men were upon the earth, so mighty an earthquake and so great. And the great city was three. When you read it carefully in the Strong's Concordance, that's exactly what it says, was three. You can say three portions, but it doesn't say divided into three parts. Theoretically, you could also say there was Old Babylon, there was Constantinople, and then there was the nations of this world, or I should say the cities of this world. See, and then when you get to the very next few words, it's explained. See, the third, the nations. Okay. Now, the cities of the nations fell, and great Babylon came into remembrance before Jehovah. Or it should read, and great Babylon came in remembrance before Jehovah, and the cities of the nations fell. You see, that's how it should read. So the cities of the nations is the Babylon that we live in today. To give unto her the wine and the cup of the wine and the fierceness of his wrath. And every coastland fled away, and the mountains were not found. And then fell upon men a great hail out of heaven, every stone in the weight of a talent. And the men blasphemed Jehovah because of the plague of hail, for the plague thereof was exceedingly great. It is done. That's the finale. So the finale, the seventh bowl of wrath, is upon great Babylon, the cities of this world. And that's the reason why it says, "Come out of her, my people." That means come out of all the cities. Israel must be gathered in. Exactly as it says in the prophets. Exactly as Yeshua Messiah said in Matthew 24. The elect. What did we just read? We just read in Israel that the gifts for Israel cannot be changed. Therefore, when the elect, when the When the believers are gathered into Israel, so must all Israel be gathered in Israel. You can't have the one without the other. Matthew 24. Verse 29, immediately after Israel's tribulation, or immediately after the 77s are finished, which I have proven over and over and over again, it's very easy to do in Daniel 9. It's so easy a 5th grader can do it. Immediately after that tribulation, immediately after the 77s are finished, shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of heaven shall be shaken, and there shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn. And they shall see the Son of Man coming in the cloud, singular, of heaven, with power and great glory. They're going to mourn because of what they see. They don't like him. They don't want him. That's why they're mourning. And he shall send his angels with the great sound of the trumpet, beginning with the first trumpet sound. And they shall gather his elect from north, south, east, and west, from one end of the sky to the other. Now let's go back to Romans 11 once again. What did we just read? I will read this now in King James Version. All right, if I can find it again. I think it's, yes, verse 28. As concerning the gospel, they are enemies for your sakes, but as touching the election, yes, they are the elect. What did we just read? As touching the election, they are the beloved for you, the patriarch's sakes. So they are the elect. That can never change. Verse 29 says, the election cannot change, for the gifts and the calling of Jehovah cannot change. So they are his elect. And what does it say in Matthew 24 again? It says, verse 31, and he shall send his angels with the great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect. Who is his elect? Israel. From the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. Isaiah 45 and verse 4 agrees with Paul. For Jacob my servant's sake, and Israel mine elect, I have called you by your name, I have surnamed you, though you have not known me. And even though Israel has not known Jehovah, has never known Jehovah, they are still his elect. Paul says it cannot change. Checkmate. Those of you who slander Israel, you lose.